So this iPhone 12 is unable to activate because it had a hard drop. So basically the customer dropped it, it lost service, and then they restored it thinking that would fix it, but unfortunately it actually bricked the phone. So what happens is after a hard drop, this iPhone motherboard is a 2-layer sandwich. So the drop causes the sandwich to separate and it has desoldered, and now we have to fix the motherboard to repair the issues it's having. So in today's video, we're gonna walk through how to diagnose the issue, how to repair it, and if you need this repair, reach out to me through my website, which I will link down below. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we gotta do is actually open up the phone. So let's take off the 2 bottom screws. We're gonna use the heat mat at 75 degrees so we can open this phone up. Now I don't know if this is OEM sealed or if it's been opened before. So let's see how easy it is to open this up. But basically, while we wait for this to heat up, what happens is when you try to activate the phone, it's gonna give you this message, and if you lock the screen, unlock it and push the I, you can see there's no IMEI, only a serial number, and that's about it. So the issue here is that we gotta fix the cellular issue to get the IMEI back by restoring it after we fix the board issue. So it's gonna be a long process, so let's get started. Let me go ahead and turn this off. And the goal is to heat up the phone itself so we can get inside and open it. My favorite tool for that is flat tools. You could even shave these down if you want it a little thinner, but you can see it's very thin. And I go in here at the bottom. It actually does look like it's been opened, so this should be fairly easy. But it's actually, this is set to 75, but sometimes it overshoots and then it comes back down. But let's go ahead and give this a try. So I start off by dripping isopropyl alcohol along the edges. Now this screen is OLED, so it will not get damaged by the ISO, and it's actually pretty warm now. So I slide the tool in between the frame and the screen, and then with the suction cup as close to the bottom as possible, I pull up, and actually you can see the screen lifting, and then add some more ISO. The key is putting the suction cup at the very end of the phone. Now if it doesn't, so it's opening up on the bottom side, on this side a lot more than the other side. So what I like to do is wedge a tool here. Oops, let me swap tools because this one has a bent tip, so I don't want to use that. So I put a tool there to keep that side open, and then with the flat side, I come in and essentially try to dislodge this corner. It's basically one of the clips is stuck. And the adhesive. All right. So let's drip some more ISO. And essentially you just want to wiggle the screen loose, especially once you get like halfway loose, it should just kind of come off. Okay, and here we go. The phone is opened. Yeah, the screen has been replaced, so it was not OEM sealed, so it's a lot easier when it's been previously opened. So now that we have it open, so let's go ahead and take out the plates. Disconnect the battery, unplug the screen. Then we gotta get this battery out. So here in the US, we have a 5G antenna flex that wraps around, so we gotta get the battery to be able to unscrew this flex plate that's back there. So while it's still hot, drop some ISO and use one of these flat tools to get in between the frame and the battery, and essentially put pressure upwards while you drip ISO along the battery edges. And while doing that, you could also peel off this black sticker. It's very thin, so it's very hard to get. Let me try another set of tweezers. Oh, look, it's coming up already. Now what I like to do is once it's up, I like to cut the glue that's holding it, preventing it from lifting. All right, there we go. And the battery's out. So now that the battery's out, we can access these screws here There's 3 screws here that we need to access. So we can unplug that flex and then remove the plates, and then we unplug it, and now we have now be careful, there's these little metal things. I don't know what they're for. They basically fit into these cavities here, so keep that in mind. So I'm gonna turn this off because I no longer need the heat. There's some adhesive here that's holding the antenna, so you got to be careful. Drip a little bit of ISO. You don't want to pour too much because the camera's there. You don't want that ISO to go into the camera area. So essentially try to separate the adhesive. You want to be careful not to cut this cable because it is soldered onto the motherboard as well. And then we're gonna unplug everything. This one has a power button cable running through it, so what I like to do is just slice this sticker right here, so you could kind of fold over this flap. You could also now dislodge it. Now you can put it back and then unplug everything else. We have to take the motherboard out of the housing, which includes fully disassembling this. One of the worst ones is the 12 mini. You actually have to remove the camera as well to get to be able to get the motherboard out. So we gotta get these screws here. There's a lot of screws, so don't mix them up. There's some screws here, screw here, screw right here, then one under these camera flexes as well. It's a booby trap setup here. All right, and then we gotta unplug these down here. So hopefully this is not a really extreme damage. I'm seeing a dent here on the SIM tray, which is not a good sign. So being that it had a screen repair, most likely it had a smashed screen as well. All right, so let's see if we can do this. Get the bottom out. Fold these cables out of the way. Fold these cables. Literally have to fold them all out of the way and kind of try to wiggle out. And we're out. Oh man, so take a look. This is what the motherboard looks like. Is it curved? We gotta move this cable out of the way. Looks straight-ish. I don't know, I can't tell. All right, so let's take a look under the microscope. All right, so the first thing I like to do is get these stickers out so we can inspect the board. We want to see from the side to see if we see any gaps. The goal, if we don't see any gaps, then usually it's cracked solder joints. It basically just needs a reball. If we do see a gap, then it could be rip pads and stuff. And at a certain point, when there's too many rip pads, then it's just beyond economical repair. In other words, the time and effort to repair it and have it be reliable is way beyond the cost of the phone. So right now I'm taking out these little foam stickers as well, just because these will melt when we go to separate this sandwich. So let me just get these out first. If you see my other videos, you see that I remove these all the time. Now what they're for, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What are these here for? Is it for water damage protection? I would say yes. Or tool damage protection. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let me fold this antenna out of the way. So here's the 2-layer sandwich. So there's the top layer, which I'm holding this upside down, top layer and bottom layer, and then there's this thing called the interposer, basically the spacer that bridges the two pieces together. Usually the break you'll see in between here. So so far this looks all normal. And let's flip it over. Now this side's a little trickier to see because of the angled phone, but actually I see some, it's like a bunch of hairs. I see some gaps here. So hopefully this is not damaged beyond repair. Usually it's not a good sign when it looks like that. Now you can see the little solder joints in there, kind of separated. Now I don't recommend you just reflow these sandwiches to try to get it working, because there's a high chance you're just increasing the odds of it having warranty issues down the road, because you need to check for rip pads. So, and then this side is hard to see because it's on the side. This is hard to see. Basically, to hold up the board, we'll never get in focus. Now you could hold this over the edge of the desk, but that's fine. We just need a quick visual inspection. So now we're gonna use a sandwich heater. It's the X360 version 2. Now, I heard this one's actually out of production, so you'll need to find a different one. I just ordered some new ones that I'll be testing. But before I do that, before I forget, let's get the sticker off as well. This will prevent us from being able to efficiently heat the sandwich so we can split it. Okay, so this is what the bottom side looks like. Here you can see where the flex is soldered on. So to put this on here, actually it's in this orientation. So we have the 12 series plates. We have it in the heater. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this to 235. I know a lot of people might freak out over this, but this is what I've been doing for a long time and never really had issues. So let's go ahead and wait this out, let this heat up so we can get this sandwich split. So once it reaches around the 200 mark, this is where I start adding flux along the edges. This is a very important step. I've had a lot of issues when I don't do this, and I figured out this is what is needed. Essentially, this allows us to reflow the sandwich pads when we're splitting it and avoids any oxidized pads. I used to have that problem a lot. Although if this had a really hard drop, the oxidized pad thing will happen anyway. But essentially the goal is to, and yeah, it makes a mess. You know, flux is always messy, but this is a necessary step. And we're at getting close to 230, so let's keep adding flux. Make sure you have a good fume extractor. I will link mine in the video description. I have a whole dedicated page where I have the full setup. All right, there it goes. So we reached 235. Now time to try to split it. So what I like to do is press down here and then stick my tool in between. I am unable to split yet, so I'm just gonna keep pressing down. Now I like to just press down at the ends, not in the center, because this is where the CPU is. You don't want to push down where the CPU is and then possibly disconnect it. So try to fit your tool in between the interposer and the top layer. If you're not getting any lift, then you're not ready yet. You can also look at this from the side view. I'm pressing down. I like to press down to kind of reflow the pads in a way and spread the heat. Yeah, still nothing. I'm gonna go on this side. Still nothing. What's funny is 12 Pro Max splits a lot easier than the 12 Pro. 12 and 12 Pro is literally the same motherboard, just some minor modifications. So for whatever reason, these will take forever to split. Probably because this is really long and skinny. I know there's people out there who use hot air during this step. I don't. This is more than enough. Now you could put a flat tool in here to try to force the split, but I would recommend that. Oh, I got a little bit of separation. I'm gonna go on this side, see if I could separate on this side as well. Oh, there it goes. Oh boy, I see a lot of pads. All right, so to split it, what I do is I like to just grab it here from the corner, lift it up, flip it over, and then turn off the heater. So I think I might have separated a little too early. Let's take a look over here. Yeah, see, this is what you want to avoid. See how these pads look all gray? If you split it too soon, you'll get a lot of that. Although the original drop could have caused this as well. There's a few rip pads here too. This might need a bottom board swap. But before we do that, let's check the board. Let's check for shorts on baseband. Sometimes baseband itself, the baseband chip, the cellular chip, might die. It's shorted out and there's no way to fix it. So let's go ahead and check that. So let me clear out this. All right, let me get this out of the heater. I'm gonna put it actually on this little steel block. This will allow the board to cool down really fast. While that's happening, let's move that to the side. Let's inspect this one. Yeah, so I think definitely split it too early. You can see the solder joints are not, they should look more like this. The solder joints, see how they're like little like half balls, whereas these look like was not fully heated yet. So maybe I should turn up my temperature next time. Yeah, so I think what happens with some of these pads is it kind of looks like there's a gray layer on the pad itself. That's like the surface area. And if you split it too soon, you peel off that layer that's allows you to solder onto, and then you can't solder onto that board anymore. There's a few rip pads here. That's easy fix. All right, let's go back over here. Now take a look. I try to solder on here. It's not gonna go well. So I run my iron over these pads. You guys can see that. See, for example, this pad. Now it does take solder, but it's like only the edges kind of really grabbing. Very tricky to deal with. Let's take a look at these right here. Oh, it's actually taking some solder. Maybe I can get away with this. You know what, let's try it. But before I do, let's check for shorts around baseband. All right, this board has definitely cooled down now. Now the question is there a bad dead baseband chip on here? So first, let's get this thermal paste compound, whatever you want to call it. All right, so let's take a look at iPhone 12. And we're really gonna look at the bottom board. Actually, so this is baseband right here, baseband CPU. This is the main cellular chip. If this chip is dead, it's game over, nothing we can do. One of the lines that shorts that will tell us if the baseband is dead is this one right here. PP0V75SMP7. So let's check if this line is shorted. So if I flip it over, all right, so red probe on ground, black probe is gonna be this line here. Oh, look at that, not shorted. You can also check a few other lines around here. Essentially, I'm looking for a reading. That one's a reading of 0.017. So that could be a low resistance line. We'll come back to it. As well. These are all probably the same line. That's probably ground. Yeah, these are all probably the same line. We'll come back to that. Let's check up here. No shorts that I can detect. All right, so let's take a look at ZXW to see what that other line was. So the one we're probing is this one. 0V7 SMP 0V7 SMPS 16. So I know 12 Pro Max has a line that's low resistance. Let me check that one and then compare it to this one. So, you know, one of the key skills to this is being able to translate scenarios from one device to another and learn to apply them, you know, universally. And yeah, just off the top of my head, I know when these two caps here in the middle will read as short, but really it's not shorted. It's just naturally a low reading on diode mode, therefore it causes the meter to beep. So a lot of people mistakenly think a beep equals a short. It's not shorted. This is the line on the 12 Pro Max that fails. SMP7S. Wait, that's the same one on this one. Yeah. So on 12 Pro Max, if this one's shorted, usually baseband itself is damaged. Same here, same line, just in a different spot on the board. So this one, no issues so far. Basically, I think we should be able to fix this. So let's go ahead and continue. So let's see if we can actually get this board prepped to reball. Those pads are very sketchy. It's very hard to say whether or not I'll be able to reball just because of these really gray oxidized pads. So what I'm gonna do is let's prep all the pads first to see if we can see if this is gonna be fixable. So I might just be doing this and end up being a waste of time, but let's see. So I have this on the heater that is off, but it's still warm, so it allows me to spread the flux, although it's not probably cooled down by now. So I'm gonna turn this down to 135. We just need minimal heat for this. The goal is to just warm it up so we can easily spread the flux. Like you can see now, we're able to easily spread flux on all the pads, which makes it easy for us to solder with. So using my knife tip, I'm going to run my iron over all the pads, which is also going to help me pick up some of these ripped pads off the bottom board. Now once you get a few on your iron, you could basically scrub your iron on your brass wire to clean it up. So the goal here is to get your solder over all the factory solder and essentially replace it. So let's go through that. And if possible, avoid getting solder on the gold edges, because then that will flow into, like it'll look ugly, although technically it won't affect much. Like I got some solder here on the top, but that's fine. And it just won't look pretty. Yeah, see here's some of those gray pads. Let's see if I could get solder to attach to them. Oops, I got some on the edges. So we're just going through clean my iron. I saw a little rip pad that was left behind. See, all these pads are fine except those like really dark gray ones. And the reason why you want to do this first, because we got to wick it after, and I found that if you do this first, the wicking part is so much easier than if you try to just wick the factory solder and never like clean surface. This also kind of cleans everything in the process. Oops, my tool slipped. So this kind of cleans all the solder and stuff so that it's nice and uniform. And then plus we're using leaded solder, so it's a lot lower temp. Alright, so I pretty much got solder on all the pads. So now it's time to wick. So my favorite wick recently has been this one. Chem Wick Rosin number 4. It was like 30 bucks, but it's a really large spool. So I will link this in the video description. If I don't, please comment and remind me. There's a lot of tools that I cover in this video and sometimes I forget which ones I mentioned. Actually, so just lay it flat using inverse tweezers. And see how it's leaving behind shiny solder pads? That's what you want. And use the flat side of your iron to press down and essentially wick away. Wick the board flat. So we're coming up to the pads that were like the gray oxidized ones. Essentially, once the wick gets too saturated with solder, I snip off the end and then we have a fresh piece of wick. So let's wick away all this. All right, just like that. Alright, so wick it all flat. And you can tell when your wick has oversaturated, when it's no longer leaving flat pads and it's like you still see solder on the pads you're wicking. So like right here I can see there's still some solder kind of being left behind. So that's when you trim off, essentially trim off the end. Now you have a new fresh piece. You're gonna burn through a lot of wick in this process, so keep that in mind. Make sure you guys have enough wick in stock. It's a critical tool for micro soldering. Alright, so yeah, that's pretty much everything is wicked. Now we got to use these foam swabs, which I will also link, and these are great because it doesn't leave behind any lint. but it cleans really well, as you can see. Now make sure you're doing this with really low temp, so like 130-ish. If you're too hot and you're doing this, you're gonna get the pads burnt. Like the burnt flux is gonna stay behind on the pads, and then you're gonna have a really hard time trying to reball and clean that. You might have to come back with your with the blade or something to scrape off the burnt layer. All right, so this one's kind of already saturated. I'm gonna throw this away, grab a new one, and kind of continue on. By the way, all these tips I'm giving you guys is from my experience. So trust me, I spent a lot of time struggling with a lot of these repairs. So when I say, you know, this is like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, or if I say like, oh, do this, just take my word for it. I've experimented enough that you can save yourself the time. All right, I'm gonna do one more pass with another one. I do still see some residual dirtiness. So make sure it's super clean. If you don't clean it perfectly, you're not gonna get a good reball. One of the key steps to this. All right, so let's take a look at those gray pads that I was worried about. So there are some here, you can kind of see a little bit. So maybe we'll just on the surface, yeah, see like this one right here, so it has gray junk. You try to scrape it down as well to get a little, you want the shiny silver surface because that's what solder sticks to. If you don't, you're gonna have a really hard time trying to reball this. All right, so this is pretty clean. I mean, as clean as you can get. All right, so that's one board. Now we have another board. So I'm gonna use this heater as a heater for this one as well, although it's gonna be a little more difficult because it's not designed for this board shape. So first, let's get this thermal paste off. And trust me when I say get this stuff off, because if you get this on the pads, it's gonna get real hard to clean after. Because it disintegrates into sand basically. And if you have sand on your pads that you're trying to solder onto, you're gonna have a real bad time. All right, so I got most of it off. All right, so my goal here is to do the exact same thing. We're gonna prep all the pads. By applying flux. We're gonna have to fix a few pads. And then we're gonna hopefully just need a reball to fix this. All right, so since we're on a preheater, it should be pretty easy to prep all the pads. Now when you're doing this, you gotta be real careful not to bridge any components that are nearby here. There's a lot of resistors and caps in these areas, so keep that in mind. If you bridge them and then you try to boot the device, you could, for example, like kill the CPU. I forgot which line specifically, but Aaron Harrington noticed he saw like some really low voltage CPU line next to like VDD main, and if those bridge together when you're like prepping the pads here, you can potentially kill the phone, like permanently kill it. So you don't want that to happen. Be careful with that. All right, I've done this bottom side. Let me do this part. You gotta get every single pad. And then the next part where we wick is gonna be terrible. It's real difficult to wick, and you're gonna see that process. So hopefully you guys don't enjoy my struggle, but hopefully you guys can see why this repair costs so much. So if you want to reach out for a quote, whether it's your personal phone or you want to do it for B2B, like you want to outsource this repair to us, and we do specialize in B2B repairs. So if you're a repair shop and you need this repair done on behalf of your customer, reach out to me. 90% of our business is B2B, maybe even more. So we know how to handle all this. Really smooth process. We've been doing B2B since 2018, so we're not new to this. All right, this part's tricky because we're in between the little valley. All right. Now back to wicking. Now if someone has a better solution to wicking these boards, let me know. I want to hear your thoughts. If you want to post a video of the process, you have my Facebook group, the phone repair community, where you can post videos. It's going to be linked in the video description. Oh man, it's a really tough spot. You gotta make sure you get all the pads. A lot of those were ground, so it's really hard to wick them all. Sometimes you get lucky and you can't press down really well because the board moves around. So I'll just do this section by section. So this is the torturous part. It's very important you do this step. So we're basically prepping. I like to prep the boards first before I do any further troubleshooting, because that needs to be done no matter what. So might as well just get it out of the way first thing, and then now if it's gonna be a bottom board swap, sometimes you still have to go through this step because you don't see the bottom board damage. So you have to basically work twice. Prep the original bottom board, and then it still has issues, so now you have to prep the replacement bottom board. Okay. This part's real tricky. Alright, let me clip the wick. And as you're doing this, if you need to, looks like I bumped the components. Let's take a look at ZXW. So ZXW shows some components here, but in my case, I don't know where that came from. All right, so I couldn't easily find a donor board that was not already split. So in order to avoid splitting a sandwich, I'm rewatching the video I just recorded, and I can see there's a component here that is missing on my board here. It goes right here. So pretty safe to assume that's it. So let's put that back and see if we have any issues. You know what? I don't know if that's actually it. So looking at the video, I should rewatch it. That looks like a different component. The other one looks like a resistor, whereas this looks more like a capacitor. Oh no, you know what? Let's go ahead and put it back. I think because it was upside down, it gave it a different look. All right, let's just assume that's fine. Because I was rewatching the video, it's really hard to tell whether it was, because it's all shiny, so you can't really see when that happened. So let's just keep going, and once we're done, we'll test the top board only to see if there's any issues. Good thing I spotted that. And this is kind of what I was saying, is you got to be careful with your iron. Real easy to pick up components like that. So I'm going to just try to sweep downwards. Hopefully I can do it. Yep. There we go. Basically this board rotated on me. Oh man. Very tedious process. I'm basically just gonna come all the way across, hoping to get it all in one swoop, and I think I did. Let's try that again. Nope, not working. The board is sliding. Let's start from down here, and there's my website, mail-in repair service, vccboardrepairs.com, and we go this way. Looks like this is working. Look at that. All right, cool. So we got a big chunk in one swoop. Next is this little crevice, like this little canyon, component canyon. So what I like to do is lay the wick all the way across, press down, and then kind of curve it up, and then go sideways like this, and hope to pick up majority of the solder. Sometimes I don't get all the solder. Well, here's some here at the ends. This should be doable, but sometimes in there I don't get all the solder. But as long as it's like 90% wicked away, I just leave it, just because it's so hard to reach in there. I got lucky that time and got most of it. All right, so now that we have that all wicked, what I like to do is actually clean it on a clean cloth, paper towel type thing. And this is the fastest way to do it with the toothbrush, versus the swabs are doable. It's just very time consuming. This is a lot faster because it's easier to do it on the top board than the bottom board like this, because you truly have to clean the whole board in this case. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a lot easier to just scrub the whole board. This also kind of pushes the flux into the towel. You want every pad to be shiny and silver. You don't want to leave behind any burnt flux on the pad, because then that's going to prevent the solder from, bonding with the other solder. Okay, so we got a big chunk of that taken care of. Now one more time. This time I'll use another clean cloth, but on my finger, to kind of clean up and absorb all the flux that's left behind on the board. Get it nice and clean and dry. Now it's fine if we have the inside parts kind of not clean, but as long as the pads are clean, that's the important part. And here's that resistor that came off. Might have to hot air back on. I don't know if you guys can see that. Here, let me try. Let's make sure it's on. So basically I'm hitting it with my iron, hoping to reflow that back into place. It's not working. I'm not sure if it's working. It didn't seem like it was on there. So let's see if I can solder it with hot air. That was much better. I saw it kind of solder into place, so I'll just go with that. And it looks like that's a camera line. So, although there's no camera there, so, but whatever, it's related to the camera somehow. So this is an iPhone 12. So you can see some empty spaces. That's for the iPhone 12 Pro stuff. So there's 2 ICs at least missing, and there's one connector here missing. So you kind of get an idea of the difference between the 12 and 12 Pro. Alright, so I'm just cleaning up any excess flux on every side. Alright, let's go ahead and test this out. Alright, so now we're going to test the top board only for a few things. Make sure it still turns on, and also make sure that OLED is still good. So the way I have this set up is a DT880 is my DC power supply, which has a iPhone 12 mechanic iBoot cable. It plugs in this direction. I have the screen plugged in. Also, let me plug in the ear speaker flex so our brightness will work. So just the top board only. I want to make sure we didn't break anything. So first step is push power. No current draw before prompt to boot. That's a good sign. Next is to short the power button to ground. Now, if you don't know how to do this, you can just plug in a power button. So I'm going to go ahead and touch the power button pin right now. Oops, missed. Right now. And you can see the current draw. And the trick here is you got to wait. It's going to hang at 130-ish, 120-ish. And then as soon as it shoots up, you let go. And then you can see it boots up. So you can see there's no damage to the OLED from the original opening. Otherwise, it'd be some green lines or something. And then let's see if it boots to the, there you go, yeah. So it's booting up. You can still see it's working. So phone is still good. Current draw looks normal. So let's go ahead and test out the next step. All right, so next is we gotta test the bottom board with the top board as is to make sure that all we need to do is just reball the sandwich and fix it. So right now what I'm doing is I actually didn't film this on camera, but I cleaned this bottom board because this is all full of flux, so that when you put it in here, this is the Mega Idea sandwich jig. This allows us to test the sandwich connected together without physically soldering it. All right, and then keep in mind we have this 5G flex here this whole time, so you got to be careful with it. Don't damage it. This thing sits in here, actually a little bit curved, but we'll see. And then we put that board there. We put the spacer for it. This is the faux interposer, so to speak, and then we put the top board like that. Now I like to pour alcohol everywhere on here, just so that sometimes, especially if you use this a lot, you'll get a lot of flux that will crust up in here in different places, so it won't I don't know if you guys can hear that. You need all the pins in that little plastic white part to be springy. If not, then it's gonna have issues. It's not gonna make good connection, because there's like basically a spring that connects that kind of pushes down on the bottom board and on the top board, so it makes a connection through it. So once you do that and you got it nice and springy, then we put this one. So remember, we have the 5G antenna, so see how you can route this in here. Actually, this goes right here. All right, so I think actually this cable would have to go down here, because this thing has a gap here. There's like a little gap, so that's where the antenna can actually fit through. Oh, right there. You gotta be the antenna is loose, and you gotta be real careful, make sure it's lined up before you snap it in, otherwise you can break the board. All right, so now it's essentially it's soldered on temporarily with this jig. Next is we need a charging port, so go ahead and plug that in. So let me know what you guys think about these little tables. This is my little sandwich table, as you can see here. Allows me to place this here so that I can plug in a battery. So we'll get the flex. Before I do that, let's plug in the screen. All right, screen, here, speaker flex. Last is the battery. So you gotta get creative with this cable. You gotta fold it out flat so that it can plug in. Just be careful not to damage anything. Here it goes. All right, so let me adjust this over here. So this little blue little stands allows you to rest the battery here on the sandwich, and you have a solid workspace. Next is I'm gonna plug this into the computer. This will prompt the device to boot, and then we can restore this phone. There you go, Apple logo. There you go. All right, so we have the phone connected to the computer. It's turning on. Now, one thing about this issue is once you restore it with a bad baseband or no service issue, what happens is, as you guys saw, the IMEI was missing. Let's see, United States, set up manually. So the IMEI is missing. So here where it says IMEI is NA. Click refresh, still NA. Basically, what you did is when you restore it, you wiped the IMEI from the operating system. I mean, in layman's terms, this is how I like to think of it, and so far has been true. So you basically restored it without a baseband working. Baseband is a cellular chip, and if you restore it, it wipes that information from the operating system. So now when it tries to activate, Apple rejects this phone saying it's not an iPhone, so it's not going to allow it to activate. And that's proven here by the IMEI missing. If you click activate here as well, you're going to see it's going to fail in a few seconds. There you go, it failed. So we're unable to activate this phone. Here on the screen you can see no IMEI. So assuming the board issue is now fixed, if we do a restore and the board issue is fixed, the IMEI should come back. We should be able to activate it and everything should be working. If not, that means there's still an issue somewhere on the board. What that is, we require more work to figure out. But as of right now, the next logical step would be this should fix it. You know, the jig itself is forcing the two layers together, has special pins that causes, here, while that's downloading, let me show you kind of what's happening. That little plastic piece, a white piece, this is what it is. It's like pins on that side and pins on this side. So when you squeeze it together, you essentially have a connection from the top board to the bottom board without physically soldering it together. These are springy. That's why you put alcohol on them. So keep that in mind. If you ever have a phone that has no service issue, do not restore it. If you don't have, if you have a motherboard issue, I do not recommend you restore it, because you will have a issue like this where each time you try something, you have to restore to see if it's fixed. It doesn't work, you have to restore again. It's a pain. So now let's go ahead and wait for this to download so we can restore it. All right, so this is downloaded. Let's go ahead and restore it. So I'm gonna pick iOS 16.4.1, Easy Flash. Here at the bottom, I'm gonna click Quick Flash. Quick Flash is restore. This is basically a wipe. Data is gonna be gone. This is already a wiped phone anyway, so it doesn't matter. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna click Quick Flash, Flash, Flash. Data is not important, so it's gonna wipe everything. So pay attention to the phone. Here in a second, it's gonna basically disconnect, reconnect a few times, and then you get the loading bar, and then we'll have a restored phone. All right, so this says about 15 minutes. So let's see if that's true. It's 12:39 a.m. right now. There you go, you can see it there, 12:40 on the right. So let's check back when this is done. And we're back. So it took about 11 minutes. We're at 12:51 now. So let's see what happens. So we gotta wait for the phone to boot up. It's gonna be on the Apple logo. And here we go. It's connected to the PC. Although on the phone, you still have a loading bar, but on the PC, you can at least see the phone. And this is where it gets tricky, because right now it still says IMEI, but not until you click refresh do you really know if it's fixed. So let's see, click it, and still no IMEI. So it's not fixed yet. We have to do some more work to the motherboard. Also, the jig isn't always 100% reliable. Sometimes I've had cases where I've played with the jig a lot of times and it still would not, I would restore it and it would still never give me the IMEI. I'll reball the sandwich and then it works. So I may just reball the sandwich just for the sake of the video, because this is where it gets tricky. These sandwich repairs become very time consuming. Usually when you do this, it works, I would say a good 60 to 70% of cases are just straightforward. You test it in the jig after, you know, prepping all the pads, and then it works. In the jig, you reball the sandwich, it works, and you're good to go. But when it doesn't, that's where it gets really time consuming, because you really gotta troubleshoot a lot. You even have to do a bottom board swap and hope that fixes it. So let's just go ahead and reball the sandwich and see if that fixes it, because it could just be the jig didn't do its job. So let's go ahead and start that process. All right, I have an update for you guys. So I actually ended up reseating the whole board here, and I got it working. So all I did was disassemble everything. I cleaned the board with some more wipes, the pads, put alcohol, put it all together, restored it one more time just because I didn't want to risk it. And you can see here the IMEI is back. Here on the screen we should be able to activate it now, although I don't have it assembled. Let's see, United States, continue. Now it's not gonna have Wi-Fi here on the phone, but if we go here on 3U tools, activate now, you'll see it won't fail anymore. Oh, let's try one more time. Oh, is it gonna work? Yeah, look at that, activated. So here on the phone, well, we don't need 3U tools anymore. If we go back on next, continue. So I'm grateful I didn't have to do a bottom board swap, because I figured, let me just try one more restore. I'll do it off camera just in case it doesn't work. I don't have to waste your guys' time. But it did work. And I even had a donor board ready to go in case I was gonna do a bottom board swap. So this is where I was saying the jig can be unreliable. So, you know, you may want to try it twice before you call it a bottom board swap or assume it's something else. There you go, we're unlocked. So we were stuck on the unable to activate, and now we're in. And if we swipe down, you can see no SIM, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are enabled. So this should be a fully functional phone after we reball the sandwich. Now, one more thing is you will have a Face ID error message because I don't have any Face ID sensors. So we'll deal with that later, but you can see Wi-Fi, you can enable and disable. The antennas aren't plugged in, so it's not going to pick up anything. Same for Bluetooth. And then cellular just says no SIM. It does not give an error. So let's go ahead and actually go through the reball process so we can complete this repair. And I totally forgot. We need to fix some pads. Maybe that's part of why it didn't work first time. Well, we got to clean this anyway. So let me clean that. My apologies. I'm just so very excited that this actually works and I don't have to do a bottom board swap. Why do I have some of this here? Alright, so let's figure out which pads do we need to fix. One of the things I like to do is my polarizer light. You can see this is normal. Polarizer light. You can see which pads, just by doing this, you can see which pads are needed. So you can see here, there's like a little dark spot. When you have the little dark spots, that means that needs to be fixed. When you don't, so these need to be fixed. This one here as well. This is kind of hard to see. This one here. And it's also, you can do this, some ISO, although it's, yeah, so this one we need to fix. So if you pull up ZXW and look at the pads that are yellow, those are the ones you need to fix. I did a 13 Pro Max video live not too long ago, about a month ago, I think by now, that I fixed 1 million pads. So let's go through that same process here. Alright, let's just start fixing these pads first. So using a blade. Now, on the last video, multiple people said to use a grinding pen. I do have one, although I need to find the tip. I don't think this would be a good tip for this. So I'll have to wait for next time. But I'll do it by hand. Alright, let's rotate this board. So there's the 2 pads there, and I'm just scratching in between so I could expose all the copper trace that is part of that. There you go. So this process is a little time consuming, but it's not that long of a process. I believe the next pad here needs to be done. Now basically what I'd like to do also is just, if you do diode mode, scrape out a little bit in diode mode, the exposed copper. You can see if it's a ground or not. Essentially, whatever is not ground needs to be fixed. So if we go over here, we're gonna measure. So that gives a reading. Oh no, this one gives me a reading. Oh no, ground. So that one doesn't need to be fixed. All right, so this one needs to be fixed. And then the one above it. And I think only a few more after that. And I think most of these are signal related. So although baseband works, it might not pick up signal if these are not fixed. So let's see if we can make that happen. So after this whole repair is complete, we need to thoroughly test it and make sure it's fully working. Otherwise, the customer is not going to be happy if they don't have a fully working phone. The goal here is to expose this copper area. All right. Oh, look at that. Those gray pads here. All right, there's a few more over there. Where else do we have rip pads? All right, just this section is left to check. So let's do a quick diode mode. Ground, ground, not ground. So let's fix that one. So there's 3 dots, so I like to scratch in between 2 of them and then go in like a little circle. Essentially expose this area here. So that we have enough surface area to solder onto. There we go. I think this will be good. Alright, let's check the last 4 pads. Ground, reading, reading, reading. Alright, so just the top row that we can skip the bottom one. We don't need ground, they're redundant. So scrape, let's see, basically left and right, and then a little bit of circle and left and right until you start kind of digging in. Now you got to be careful not to go too far, because then you can expose the ground around it, and then you've kind of created a bad scenario where your ground, basically going to short the pad to ground. So you don't want that. Alright, so we got that one. Let's finish this up. Now let me know if you guys are watching these whole videos or you guys are just skipping through, because I feel like I get so many questions in the comments that are answered in the video, but people don't watch the full thing. And the crazy part is I'm like giving away all my tips and tricks that I've had to kind of discover on my own and giving those away to you guys. So if you guys can watch the whole video, it really helps out with the algorithm as well, because that tells YouTube you guys are watching it, so I'll recommend my videos to others and will help grow the channel. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys think? Do you like these long form videos, or would you prefer just quick to the point and skip all the stuff in the middle? Because I can guarantee there's a lot of information in here that you really don't know you need it until you hear it, and it's hard to, like, I guess, document it. Alright, so I'm putting flux on all the pads I will need to repair. Okay, and then I'm going to come in with my conical tip on my 115 iron. This is a tiny little solder tip, so I could get in here. So I got a little bit of solder there, some solder there, some solder there. Let's go prep all these pads. Let me make sure I got it. Got some good amount of solder in there. Alright, so all the pads in theory are prepped. I might just go add a little bit more flux. Alright, let's get the solder lugs. These are essentially pre-made solder pads. I'm using the Refox ones. Oh no, actually this one's a Wiley. But Rewa sent me a bunch of the Refox ones, so I had a million of those. So this part is the fun part. Uh-oh, did I lose I think I lost that. Alright. Essentially stick them nearby and then we'll come back and solder them after. Okay, just put them all, make sure they don't move. If you don't get it, it's kind of hard to control these if they don't stay on the tip of your tweezers, so keep that in mind. So you gotta grab it from the sides and then place it down, otherwise it'll stick to your tweezers on the side and then you can't do anything. By the way, the longer these videos are, the longer it takes to edit, because we have to literally watch the full video, make sure there's nothing that I need to cut out. Alright, so basically just hold make sure it's aligned in that circle spot, and hit it with your iron. The solder you added to the pad will flow and grab onto it from underneath, and then your iron adds some on top. It's a win-win, or actually it's more like kill two birds with one stone. Uh-oh, there's one missing. Oh, here it goes. It moved. Okay. Okie dokie. All the pads are fixed, so let's clean this up. Now you should be able to scrub these with decent amount of pressure and they should not come off. That will tell you that you soldered them on correctly. And the one that didn't repair the pads, we can come back and make sure they're all ground. Otherwise that means we missed something. So there's a few here. Let's check again. ground. Oh, actually this is OL. So we'll need to fix that one too. Oh, this one as well. Alright. Ground, ground, ground. Alright, so 2 more. My mistake, I must have overlooked those. I'm sure if you're watching the video, you saw me skip them and you were yelling at your screen. My apologies. Let's see. So basically scrape these out, dig out the rest of the line. Alright, and then this one. Same thing as always. Go scrape this out. So I'm doing like tiny little circles to expose this. I'm going left and right, up and down, little circle, and here we go. We're getting more copper exposed. Alright, and what sucks is it's getting real late and I have to wake up real early tomorrow. So I do hope you guys appreciate these videos and watch them through, share them with all your friends, comment below, anything for the algorithm so we can keep making videos and you guys can keep watching them and learning. And essentially, I mean, to be honest, I'm teaching you guys how to be my competitor, but it seems like no one really puts that much effort into it. Alright, so add some flux. So same thing. Line it up, press down with your iron. I'm trying to get this pad to sit flat. Okay, got it. Like it had a little spike of solder on that pad, so when I tried to move it to the side, it wouldn't take because it was being, well, I mean, it wouldn't move because it was being blocked. Alright, so the rest have been checked. I think we're good now. Now the fun part, UV mask. So what I like to do is on this coin, pour some UV onto it. Actually, I like to spread it out so it's easier to apply. And essentially, tap it with my tweezer and apply it around each pad that I fixed. Oh man, a bunch of lint. So just spread it around. Make sure you get it as flat as possible. Do not create a. Basically, you need it flat. If you add any height to it, then you're basically going to block the board from sitting flat when you go to solder this on. There's a few here. Almost there. Oops, that's a lot. Now if you do get a lot of UV, just spread it out and flatten it, like right here. Just spread it. The goal is to spread it along the sides of the pad, and then we'll come back and scrape it off once it's cured. But I think that should be it. Yeah, just go ahead and spread this out just a little thick. Alright, and then the coin, I'll just flip it over and wipe it down. Obviously I haven't gotten it all off, but I'll eventually clean that. But it does prevent from making a mess with just applying it directly. Now with the UV lights, I'm gonna cure it. It's kind of spread out over a wide area, so we gotta give it a good 10 seconds or so. We want to make sure it's nice and cured. If not, then the pads aren't going to be held down. Now you could technically skip the whole UV mask step. From my experience, it has worked. Although if you do have to split the sandwich for whatever reason, then those pads are going to come off and you have to redo them all over again. So if you're confident it'll be a one-time sandwich reball, then you could technically get away with no UV mask. Alright, so now lastly is I'll expose this. Scrape out the UV. Scrape out a good 90% of the pad. But keep the UV on the sides as much as possible. And then so remember, the solder ball that's going to attach to this is going to be really large, so it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. As long as you have a surface area to solder onto, it'll work. Alright, almost there. Can't wait for the sandwich reball part. I'm sure you guys are gonna want to watch that. I'm going to be showing you guys my latest technique, the latest tools I use, and it's like pretty much 100% success rate, assuming the board is not warped, which I do need to check as well here in a second. But this is what it looks like. All the pads have exposed area to solder onto. And if you ever do need to split the sandwich, these pads will remain intact. They'll stay in place. It's very important. It'll save you a lot of time. All right, so let's grab this bottom board. I don't know. I'm trying to see if it like teeter-totters. It's hard to tell. Yeah, look at that. Slightly warped. I don't know. I think it should be fine. Alright, let's go ahead and do this reball. Alright, so very important step in this is to have all the right tools. So one is this tool that I use to scoop up out of this paste. I recommend this paste because what I use, I believe, is actually 158 Celsius temperature versus some of the other ones that are 138 or 148. This one I like the best. It gives me the best results. It is the Real Life G-Long X solder paste. I've been using it since the iPhone 10 and it works great. Next is the spatula, which we will apply, we need a paper towel or a clean cloth like this. This is the jig I recommend, the Miing Z20, I believe. This supports pretty much all sandwich models. I just bought the iPhone 14 series as well, so I'll be able to try that. But let's see what else. And then the important part in this whole process is that your boards are wicked and you use fresh paste every single time. If you use this and like reball a sandwich and 2 days later you have to reball another one, I recommend you fully clean out your tools and then start from scratch with your paste, because that was one of the biggest things I was struggling with when doing these reballs. So I'll do that here in a second. So the way this works is, this is a magnetic base, this is the alignment jig, and this is the stencil, and we're not gonna heat using the stencil. So we're gonna peel off the stencil, leave the solder balls behind, and then hot air it into place. So let's see, I believe this goes like this. Yep, there it goes. The nice thing about this one, it has a slot for the 5G antenna, and you can see it's magnetic, so the board doesn't fall out. It's being sucked into place. Now, just for a good measure, there's like a little bit of adhesive here that I'm gonna remove, just so it doesn't get stuck to my stencil when I'm working here. All right, so fold the flex flats and make sure it goes out that way. And then the top board, we're gonna put it off to the side for now. The stencil, we have little holes here where we have to line it up to the jig. So put that through, make sure it went through like this. And you should see that all the pads are exposed. They're all shiny silver. And if you see any gray pads or if it's not aligned, then fix that and make sure it's sitting flat. Oh, and then one last thing is you'll need another clean cloth, because we're going to use that at the very end to wipe down the paste. So keep that nearby. All right, so the trick, now you can see this paste is actually kind of old. So I always scoop down at the very bottom where all the new fresh paste is at. And yeah, I think this should be a good amount. You know, you can't go wrong with too much. So the deal here is now to dry this out. This is another important step in this process. So essentially press it into your towel and try to dry it out so that it's not so runny. And you need this because you need it to be somewhat dry when you go to peel off the stencil. If it's too runny, it'll spread everywhere. If it's too dry, it's gonna lift up with your stencil. So this is kind of the texture you want, like a very matte, non-shiny color. I mean, it is shiny, but not like it was brand new. And then you apply it to your tool, to your spatula tool. Oops, that's fine. Some pieces fell out. All right, so now my little spatula here has some paste on there. So now I can put this away. Let me get these pieces. I'll just put it back on my spatula. Who knows, I might need it. All right, and then for this one, it's actually pretty easy because there's nothing in the way. On some models, this little metal bracket gets kind of in the way, or the SIM tray or whatever. So on this one, essentially just apply it and spread it into every single pad, like so. And then I'll go under the microscope once I'm done, but you don't need the microscope for this step. Well, at least on camera, it's a little harder to get it all on within the shot. So let's do this first. And because it's magnetic, it is being held down with the magnets, so you don't have to worry too much about it moving around. But you can use your fingers to kind of hold it in place if you do see you need to hold it. Alright, so I pretty much applied it in a lot of spots, pretty much the whole thing. So just so you guys can get a closer look, this is kind of what we're shooting for, is apply it and spread it in. Get it real good in there. Very important step to fill in every single pad, every single square with a good amount of solder paste. Alright, so once you've applied it all, then you come in and you scrape this down flat. I like to just go right over the pads like this. Don't go like this. It's a little harder to get it all. Unless these parts, because you got to go that way anyway. But go in this angle. Or once you scoop that all up, you'll have a bunch left over, which if you have another reball within the same day or maybe within 24 hours, you can reuse this. Otherwise, I recommend just starting fresh. So I'm done with the paste. Now there's still going to be some paste residue on top. So that's when you come in with your finger, like wrap your finger so you have a really tight grip over it. Now this is when I actually do hold the stencil and then basically wipe down over the pad. And essentially you're also pressing it into the jig. So follow the shape of it. You can see how much solder paste this thing picked up. And then look in the scope, it's all nice and clean, it's all compact, but it still has solder paste over every single pad. So now the tricky parts, I don't know, I feel like I say the tricky part a lot, but this part is the one you really have to kind of just go for it. Don't pause. You basically, what I like to do is there's like a little opening here, you can see that. Grab it from one corner and peel it across to the other corner. Right here it says no hot air, basically. Do not use hot air. We gotta peel this stencil off and then hot air it. So you could also do it this way too, but I like to go from here. And I put my finger here, that way I could hold everything down while I peel it back. So 1, 2, 3, and just peel it off like that. Very deliberate, don't pause. And then take a look at this. Look at that, fat blobs of solder over each pad. Now sometimes it does kind of ooze out, but you'll see when we hot air it into place, it's all going to go into its own pad. Yeah, this is, I dare to say this is a perfect reball. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. What do you think about this reball here? It's very, I would say a good 9.5 out of 10. 9.9 out of 10. All right, so once you do that, I come in with 330 Celsius and 25 air, 25% air on my add-in hot air station. I always like to start in this corner. Oh crap, did I touch this? No. You gotta be careful, don't touch any of this, because sometimes you could accidentally bump it and touch it, and then you have to redo it. I always start at this corner and essentially hot air the solder balls into existence. You can see how they're forming. And then just kind of go along the perimeter, forming each solder ball. Look at that. Sometimes these pads where there's gold pads, the stencil has a slot for them, but in real life there's nothing there. You do have to heat it a little extra so those fall in. Otherwise there'll be rogue solder balls that may cause problems. So make sure you Watch out for those. You can even pluck them off if necessary, but here we go. Just follow along. Just go real slow. Also point your hot air away from the inside of the sandwich whenever possible. Yeah, see like these right here. These gold pads here. Make sure they form into solder balls. Alright. Alright, real slow. Look at that. See, that's what I mean. So that solder ball, how it wanted to go flying. We'll just pick it off. We don't need it. Okay, so here's a fork in the road. I like to just continue on and then I'll come back. Oh, look, here's two more. They're ready to come off. So let's surface tension do its thing, and gravity, I guess. And whatever other stuff is going on. And by the time you do this, you'll see this inner row would already formed as well. And then let's rotate this. Oh, look at that. So I'm so glad. You know, in the beginning of this video, I thought this bottom board was bad and we need a bottom board swap because of those oxidized pads, but I'm so glad we were able to fix it. It just needed a good solder wick to clean it up. Look at that. And we're here at the finish line. And now I do like to kind of just go quick once over as well. Just to make sure everything got formed. Although all the flux is gone, so it's not the same. Oh well, I think that's fine. So this is the sandwich reball. Those who have uniform solder balls across the sandwich. And we should be able to take this off. Oh, actually take out the magnet. Once you take out the magnet, the board comes off real easy. Then you can put this back there. Now while we wait for this to cool down, actually we're gonna put it over here. We're gonna put it back on the board holder. I mean the board heater. I'll turn this on and it's at 130, so I'm gonna let that warm up. Meanwhile, I need to clean this stencil before we move on. If we don't clean this, then we're not gonna be ready for the next one. Go ahead and essentially scrub the the bottom side, basically the side that was on the board. You gotta make sure you get all the flux and gunk that was on there. You can see how dirty it was based on what is left behind on the paper, on the clean cloth, whatever. Then do the top as well. The top isn't as dirty as the bottom. And then lastly, you can come in with your little hand towel to wipe it down. Alright, and put it back on the jig, and you can put this away. Now we're coming back here to this board. Alright, so I start off at 130 first to kind of keep the board warm while I prep. Oops, let me make sure this is sitting flat. Alright, 5G Flex is being stubborn. Oh well, I'll just leave it. So what I like to do is come in with a thick layer of flux. Actually, I think I should clean it. See all that stray, not stray, I don't know if you guys can see that. There's like tiny specks of solder in between. Yeah, let me clean this. I'm gonna turn this off. I have a clean-ish. Yeah, let me get a brand new one just to be sure. So at this point, this is on me. No, let me take it off. I don't want to ruin this perfect reball by being lazy and doing a shortcut. Let me get this off. Let me cool it down. Putting it on here. Because you don't want to touch the solder balls when they're warm. Even if they're not molten, they could break off if you are too impatient. All right, so this should be cooled down. What I'm going to do is clean the board. So just ISO and a little cotton swab or foam swab. Man, I'm never gonna get that right. This will pick up any debris that's in between. Debris, by debris I mean stray solder that might be in between the pads. I just didn't combine with the other pads. So this is the part where I put flux. Which is fine. Just gotta clean it real good. I don't know why I skipped this step. Well, I don't know why I almost forgot this step. That's what I meant to say. Also, this connector here always gets flooded with flux, so make sure you guys clean that really well. Alright, I think I cleaned it all. If you remember, it was like these pads over here. Oh, there's still some there. So let's focus on here. There's lots of ISO, lots of gentle scrubbing. There's some right here as well. Because what can happen is one tiny microscopic speck of solder, if it touches ground, and if it's touching ground and let's say VDD main, then you have a short. Basically, if any line is touching ground, you have a short. So it doesn't take much. One atom or molecule, or whatever you want to call it. This has a lot, but also when you raise up the temp, hoping it will clear out most of it as well. There's a lot over here. All right, I'm gonna put this back on the heater. Oops, because the heat does help with this as well. I'm gonna turn it on. We're at 130, so we should be safe. All right, it's looking better. I just want to make sure I don't have to do this twice. You don't know how many times I've had to deal with reballing a sandwich like 5-10 times, which I'm sure I could have avoided if I just took the extra time like I am now to make sure it's good. All right, So now let's apply the flux, fresh flux. Now, if you're not using flux, are you even soldering? It's a question you need to ask yourself. Oh crap, I'm out of focus. So weird, because I wasn't focused on my eyepieces, even though on the camera it wasn't in focus. Now I focused it on adjusted the focus, and I'm still in focus with my eyes, but now the camera's in focus. Oh, okay. All right. So all the flux is there. We're at 130. Time to lay the board on top. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just gotta lay it on there. Now, because this takes forever to heat up, just go to. So I like to do like 200, 210. Let's do 210. And then while that's reaching temp, let's make sure we're aligned. Actually, this looks aligned. What we're looking for is these circles that they're lined up. You'll be able to see if you're misaligned at all. Visually, it'll be obvious. Like right there. Let's see. Yeah, this actually aligns pretty well. Sometimes there's like not much room for the board to go anyway, just because of the design. So this should work. Now it's time to wait to hit the temperature. So we're at 192. So remember, we're using 158 Celsius paste. So in theory, when the paste hits 158, the solder balls will start melting. But we also are fighting against the thermal mass of the board. And I found some dirt inside this connector, which makes me want to clean it out, but you shouldn't. Oh look, there's a big blob of solder here, which we can wick away later. All right, 210. Now I don't see much flux bubbling. I kind of see a little bit in there. You can see some of the flux. All right, let me bump it to see if anything has happened. Look at that. So I'm like holding my breath as I'm trying to bump it, so I'm gonna stay quiet. But take a look at the top board. I'm literally bumping just the top layer. See that? So at least this area is molten. Let's go to each corner basically. Yep. And then lastly, I like to check this corner because sometimes this corner doesn't melt very easily. Yep. You want to bump it that much, very tiny. Once you do that, you turn this off. Heater is now off. You can see it's off, nothing on the screen. And we get this board out. So I like to lift up this side and rotate it basically out of that hole. And then on this side, lift that up. You know what? Let's do this side. On this, let's get it in camera. So go underneath, out, and then let's try to get it off this plate. Okay. All right, so I've gotten basically the board out of the heat plate, so this should cool it down a little bit faster. And then once we let it cool down a little bit more, we can put it on the little steel block, which I think we should be good now. So I'm just gonna try to get it on there. It reminds me a lot like you know, like the gurneys, the hospital, the ambulance beds, when they get you to the hospital. Well, I don't know from experience, but from watching movies, I guess. When they get you to the hospital and they transplant, or they transfer you over from the gurney, you know, the ambulance bed to the hospital bed. You gotta, like, I don't know how to describe it, but this just reminded me of that. All right, so here's how to check if it's still hot. You don't want to press down on the board. Drop some ISO and see how long it takes to evaporate. Looks like it's not evaporating that quick, so I think we should be good. Now this connector always is full of flux. While it's hot, good time to blow it out. This is a 5G antenna that goes in here as well. So basically you non-Americans get to experience no connector here. Us Americans, we get extra connectors, extra flex cables for all that extra freedom we have, I guess. All right, let's clean that out. The board is already room temperature, so I think we're good. And still, I really hate that, how this thing is flooded. All right, let's just ignore that. Let's take a look at the actual reball itself. You can see some of the solder balls are there, but there's no large gaps. You can see solder balls there, but that looks all normal. That looks normal. Normal. Pretty much everything so far looks normal. All normal. Yep, this looks good. Now looks can be deceiving. We could have a short on the board or something. So let me also clean this a little bit. There's flux everywhere. Essentially scrubbing off all the side flux. All right, some ISO. Oops. And lastly, the bottom side, which is notorious for a ton of flux. You want to make sure you clean this, because if you need to, pop it in and out of the housing, especially if you're not 100% sure it's going to work, this thing will stick to everything, and then you're going to have trouble. All right. I can't tell if it's the board that's sticky or just my gloves. All right. Pretty clean to me. Now we go back to the basics. First, to see, is there a short? Very common to have a short on a sandwich reball, especially on a 12 series. No short. Thank goodness. All right, next, let's see if we prompt to boots. Prompt to boots, yeah, it looks normal so far. Hold it. And now you let go and it should continue the boot sequence. So that all looks normal. So I'm gonna go ahead and yeah. And let's go ahead and test this out in the housing. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finally, I have this fully assembled. You gotta plug in the battery. Okay, we're gonna plug in the charger so we can prompt it boots. In theory, this should boot. There you go, Apple logo. Now the final test is, do we get signal? Does it say no SIM? Phone has booted up. We have a reballed. Now the final confirmation, no SIM. So this thing, so far so good. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are blue, so that also means good. Now let's do the ultimate no service test. Is pop in an active SIM. It'll say no service. And let's see, do we get service? Sometimes, especially after the first time, it'll take forever. Oh, there it goes. We got T-Mobile. Do we get 5G or Edge? Does that even still exist? I'll be so mad if this doesn't work. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in airplane mode. Give it a good 10 seconds and take it off. Make sure it, oh, there it goes, 5G UC. So this is working. Let's go ahead and make a phone call to customer service. All right, I have sound.
So tell me, how can I help you today?
Billing.
Billing questions. I'll get you right over.
All right, so that works. Let's see. All right, cameras work. So remember I bumped that resistor that was related to the cameras. Selfie camera works. Now one thing that's not gonna work right now is Face ID. It's gonna fail right away. That's because I restored the phone with the Face ID sensors unplugged. So I need to do another restore, or actually I could do an update to fix that. So just, that's low priority, I could fix that. Apple Wallet works, which means NFC is good. Let's go to Wi-Fi. Oops. Wi-Fi, we get Wi-Fi networks, both 2G and 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz Bluetooth. It's picking up Bluetooth devices. So yeah, this is all fully working. Cellular options are all there. So, oh my God, this took way too long, but we got it working. I'm so glad. Also, it's unlocked and not iCloud locked, so we're able to do a full test as well. So that's very good news. So there you have it. That is how you fix an iPhone 12 no service. The process is very similar for pretty much all sandwich models. When you want to fix no service, you have to do a sandwich split. You got to fix any rip pads, reball it, and put it back together. It's a very time-consuming process, and there's a lot of tools involved. So keep that in mind when you hear the price for these repairs. So I appreciate all you guys who watched this video. If you made it here to the end, let me know. I want to hear who actually watched the full several hour video. You know, if you want to support the channel, check out my t-shirts like this one. I will link those down below. Join my locals community. I post there regularly about the different repairs I'm working on, and there's some other people that are starting to post there as well. Also, don't forget, all my tools from this video and that I use regularly are linked down below. And if you need this repair, reach out to me. We do offer mail-in service for customers across the US, so don't be shy. Send me a message, we'll send you over a quote. So thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you check out this video here where I did an iPhone 13 Pro Max that had a bunch of rip pads, so check that out. So thanks everyone, I'll see you guys in the next one.